Hello YouTube, my name is Nebutron and welcome to the channel. I make content on television, film and video games, so don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy that kind of content. Today I'm going to be looking at another recent Netflix entry. It's the movie Stowaway, starring Anna Kendrick, Daniel Day Kim, Toni Collette and Shamir Anderson. You know, I don't think I have much to say on this one, so as usual, I'm going to break down the plot, then go into my thoughts. So stay tuned to the end to find out my analysis and score. This review will have some spoilers, you have been warned. Stowaway is a space thriller about a small crew who are flying to Mars for research purposes and to essentially lay down some early groundwork which they hope could lead to breakthroughs in the exploration for the viability of life on Mars. At the launch, there's something odd and they wonder if they've made the correct weight calculations before takeoff. Turns out they have, there's just another person on board, they just don't know it yet. Marina, the commander of the ship, portrayed by Toni Collette, stumbles across an accidental stowaway in Michael, portrayed by Shamir Anderson. Michael is unconscious and in freeing him, not only is Marina's arm badly injured, but a device used to regulate the breathing atmosphere by circulating the carbon dioxide is destroyed. The three main crew quickly discover that there isn't enough oxygen on board for all of them to survive, even with David, portrayed by Daniel Day Kim, sacrificing his research in an effort to generate more oxygen from his algae. David and Marina feel it makes logical sense to sacrifice Michael as he is the stowaway, he doesn't have the training the crew does, and he isn't critical to the mission. It's Zoe, portrayed by Anna Kendrick, who flat out refuses to sacrifice Michael, pushing for more time while their mission control back on Earth can figure out alternatives. However, there are no real viable ways out, and the one shot they do have is carrying out a risky maneuver that requires them to leave their shuttle to climb and draw liquid oxygen from their launcher via tethers. This risky option suddenly becomes necessary as David's algae fails and there's only enough oxygen for two. They manage to fill up the two required tanks of oxygen, but a solar storm approaches, forcing them to leave a tank leaking and try racing back with just one. Unfortunately, Zoe loses the one tank as she scrambles back, and they're faced with the realization that in order for three of them to survive, one of them will need to sacrifice themselves to the radiation poisoning and retrieve the last tank before it's gone. And it's Zoe who decides that she will be the one to make the ultimate sacrifice for the crew. So what did I think of Stowaway? It was okay. Dramas in the outer regions of space can be difficult to pull off. They are typically slow burners that, when done well, can really ramp up the tension for an excellent payoff. The problem with that is that it's a fine line, and if you miss the mark, you end up with a boring movie. And I think Stowaway unfortunately falls more into the boring camp, but on the flip side, the cast is really strong. I'll start with Toni Collette's Marina. She's probably the least developed of the characters. She's the veteran of the crew, the most experienced, and it's her final voyage. And if there's one thing I can say about Toni Collette, it's that she always understands the assignment.
Don't you swear at me, you little shit! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! Do you understand? All I do is worry and slave and defend you, and all I get back is that fucking face on your face!
I'm a big fan of Toni Collette. Her character Marina, on the other hand, is probably the least interesting of the bunch. I mean, we know she's experienced and professional, but I couldn't make out any more about her motivations or desires. She's just doing her job and going through the motions. And it does feel like the injury she sustains early on is just a plot device to rule her out of even the suggestion that she sacrifice herself. But I found that when it came down to it, I didn't care about her in the slightest. I didn't care whether she lived or died, whether she was a hero or not. I didn't feel she had much connection to any of the other characters. She's just kinda there. But Toni Collette plays the role magnificently. That slightly cold demeanor, which is really just utmost professionalism, comes through in her performance, which is delivered with a convincing, at least to me, Australian accent. David is someone we're a little more invested in. He's the typical mild-mannered scientist who has a cute father-daughter dynamic with Zoe. He's a little too old to be a big brother, maybe just a senior colleague then. There are jibes about the Yale-Harvard rivalry, but there's a mutual respect between the two of them. And we know David's a good guy because when they discover Stowaway Michael and Zoe mentions he's going to have to share credit on his thesis due to Michael's assistance, he's okay about it. It's about the work for him. Even when he basically tells Michael to kill himself, which is fucked up, he's fully transparent with him when he suggests it. He tells him the whole situation in detail. You know, the more I think about it, the more heartless I find it, because Michael and David seem cool. They even bond over jazz. But I suppose David's trying to protect the mission and the crew, and sure, it does seem to tear him up inside, I guess. Zoe is probably my favourite character in the movie. She's played with real passion by Anna Kendrick. She's witty, she's exuberant, and she's confident. She carries all the energy in a movie that really doesn't have a lot of it. Whether it's poking fun at David or having a heart-to-heart with Michael, she's a character I just believed. In the scene where Marina and David reveal to her the gravity of the situation, Zoe flat out refuses to just give up on Michael. Yes, she's a doctor and a researcher, but you know her refusal isn't driven by her vocation, but by her character. And when she tells Michael about a near-death experience in an effort to convince him not to give up, absolutely nothing about it comes across as insincere. Anna Kendrick fully invests into making Zoe a rounded character. Shamir Anderson does an excellent job with the kind-eyed and hard-working Michael. His performance is just brilliant. Michael feels like the most developed character, and it seems like it's done with good reason because once he discovers the reality of the situation, he has to deal with the emotional toll of understanding that he is the expendable one on board. Shamir really does a great job playing a tortured Michael, who is a guy who has come from tragedy to persevere. He's the sole carer for his sister, he's survived the fire that killed his father. He's been through it. We sympathise with the situation Michael finds himself in, and he manages to draw up some rapport with Zoe and David, and while it's not as maybe convincing as the banter Zoe and David have with each other, it's okay enough. I mean, to be fair, he is the new guy trying to pull his weight. Okay, I'll stop. I thought the music in Stowaway was pretty good, particularly towards the end as the drama ramps up. It's not groundbreaking, but the ominous undertones absolutely serve to heighten the real tension you feel when watching the movie. The visual effects too are pretty good, and I have no idea what the budget was, but this definitely isn't a massive blockbuster action movie, and I thought the visuals were impressive for what they were. I also really liked the production design, and the cool tones complemented the lighting, given an effective sense of the cold void of space. And at the end, when Zoe steps out into the solar storm, I thought the effect of the radiation hitting her suit was beautiful for a second before I remembered she was effectively about to die. Stowaway is written and directed by Joe Penna, and I found the writing to be fine. The strength of a movie like Stowaway is always going to be its cast, and Penna is fortunate to have such talented stars because they all pull their weight. The issue, or at least my issue for a while, is that I wasn't sure what this movie was about or whether something significant was going to happen. The question of who lives and who dies is of course a huge one, and for a while I wondered if this was a movie exploring the difficult boundaries of the utilitarian ethical dilemma that is the trolley problem. Do you sacrifice one to save the many, and if so, under what circumstances? Utilitarianism often concerns itself with what allows for the most good for the most people, but at one point in the movie, Marina points out to the command base that even if they were to sacrifice Michael, the crew would be ineffective for the remainder of the journey because of the huge guilt they'd have to deal with. And for a time, I wondered if the movie was trying to play around with these questions, but after a while I was less concerned with that and just figured it's a movie about a sad thing happening to decent people and how they cope with it. It's how they all deal with the emotional and moral dilemma that creates the tension in the movie and allows for some really cool moments. Unfortunately, it takes a long while to pick up steam, and while the performances are all strong, I wasn't as invested in the whole crew, which would have definitely heightened the overall experience. Stowaway was okay, and I give it a 3 out of 5. A huge thanks if you made it to the end. Have you seen Stowaway? And if you have, what did you think of it? Let's talk about it in the comments below. If you haven't seen it but want to hear my take on something else, drop a suggestion in the comments below and we can talk about that too. If you enjoyed the review, subscribing, sharing and commenting are all a massive help. I'm working on making content on TV and games as it has just been film up until now, so stay tuned for some of that. Until next time, I'm out.